Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a classic, timeless story to really pick apart the nuts and bolts of power. We're going to use this incredible fable about a stolen throne to map out exactly how trust is built, how ridiculously easy it is to break, and the massive effort it takes to build it back up again. Let's get into it. A throne can be stolen through deception, but truth and justice will always find their way back. Think about that for a second. This single idea is pretty much the heartbeat of our whole analysis today. It's not just some nice, neat little moral tacked onto the end of a fairy tale. It's literally the structural foundation of everything we're about to look at. We're going to break down the exact mechanics of a hostile takeover and, more importantly, how truth and justice inevitably claw their way back to the surface. All right, let's start with part one, a kingdom built on trust. So before we can really appreciate how this entire realm completely collapsed, we have to understand what made it so incredibly prosperous in the first place. And right at the center of that prosperity is our main guy, King Alexander. Now, he wasn't just sitting on a chair giving orders. He was genuinely wise. He was respected, and he actually earned the love of his people through three very specific traits: fairness, kindness, and courage. Those three things, they were the absolute pillars of his entire rule. But, no one rules in a vacuum, right? And this is where we get a really fatal contrast. On one hand, you've got King Alexander building his authority on that solid rock of fairness, kindness, and courage. But standing right there next to him is his absolute most trusted minister, Victor. And while Victor played the part of the fiercely loyal right-hand man perfectly, his internal compass was pointing in a totally different direction. He secretly, desperately craved power. So while Alexander is out there building public trust, Victor's ambition is just quietly simmering in the background, entirely fueled by deception. Which brings us to part two, the treacherous coup. Now, every successful coup needs a window of opportunity, right? For Victor, that window swung wide open when King Alexander actually went out to do his job. The king left the capital, taking his army out to secure the kingdom's borders. I mean, he's literally out there risking his life to defend the realm, totally trusting that his home base is safe in the hands of his best guy. But Victor didn't see this as a time to manage the kingdom. He saw it as his golden opportunity to strike. And Victor didn't just blindly grab for the crown. He had a meticulously calculated four-step playbook. Step one, he starts spreading these subtle lies to the nobles, basically whispering that the king had gone soft and was unfit to lead. Step two, he uses straight-up bribery and deception to buy the loyalty of the high-ranking officials. Step three, when Alexander finally comes home, Victor literally locks the palace gates in his face. No way in. And step four, the absolute nail in the coffin, he publicly and falsely accuses the rightful king of abandoning them all. Honestly, it's a terrifying masterclass in manipulation. So what happens next? Let's move to part three, exile, rebellion, and return. Picture this. The gates are barred, the throne is stolen, and suddenly the rightful king is completely cast out into the wilderness. He's forced into exile with just a tiny handful of soldiers who actually stayed loyal. It is a brutal, devastating fall from grace. But here's what you absolutely have to notice about Alexander: his resilience. The source text makes it clear that even though he was completely heartbroken by this betrayal, he absolutely refused to throw in the towel. He didn't just fade away into the history books. Instead, he started the grueling, unglamorous work of going town to town, village to village, looking for everyday people who still believed in him. Meanwhile, back in the capital, the mask comes completely off. With Alexander out of the picture, Victor just unleashes his true colors. He immediately jacks up the taxes, starts actively punishing totally innocent citizens, and basically rules 100% through fear. This kingdom, which had been thriving under Alexander's kind hand, just nosedives right into chaos. And guys, this is exactly what happens when leadership is built on a foundation of lies instead of genuine trust. But here's the catch. Ruling through fear is a wildly unstable strategy. As the people suffered more and more under Victor, they just started missing their old king even more. You can see the momentum completely shift here. What starts as months of quiet exile slowly turns into this massive grassroots movement. It's like a snowball effect. They gather support, which turns into a powerful, dedicated army, and inevitably leads to a massive march right back to the capital. Alexander is coming back, and he's bringing the literal will of the people with him. And bam! That leads us right to the explosive climax of the story. A massive battle kicks off right outside the city walls. But check this out, the real game changer wasn't just military tactics. It was a civilian uprising. The very citizens that Victor had been tormenting actually rise up and throw the gates open for their true king. Without the people's support, Victor's entire operation just folds like a house of cards. And Victor, he realizes his stolen empire is done for and tries to run away like a coward, but they catch him before he can even slip out. All right, let's wrap this up with part 4, Justice and the True King. So, getting your throne back is one thing, right? But how you handle the aftermath of such a massive betrayal, that's what actually cements your legacy. The very next day, the energy in the capital is just electric. Alexander is back on the throne, and the whole kingdom is called to the royal court. But it's not a party. They're there for a super tense, solemn event, the formal judgment of Victor. You can practically feel the tension in the room as the man who nearly destroyed the country is finally dragged forward. Victor is brought in, completely covered in chains. All that arrogance, all that bribery and plotting, it's all gone. He's totally stripped down, left with nothing but this incredibly pathetic plea. "Your Majesty, have mercy on me." Now, Alexander doesn't lose his temper, he doesn't scream, he just looks at Victor super calm and delivers this absolutely devastating line. He says, "You were given trust, honor, and friendship. Instead of protecting the kingdom, you betrayed your king and your people." I love that he zeroes in on the real crime here. It wasn't just stealing a fancy chair, it was the ultimate, unforgivable betrayal of a personal friendship and the public's trust. But a smart leader knows that real justice needs a firm hand, especially to make sure the kingdom is safe moving forward. So Alexander hands down a really severe, but totally just punishment. Victor is effectively erased from power. He's stripped of all his titles, all his money, all his privileges, and he's banished to spend the rest of his life in some remote fortress, literally guaranteeing he can never ever pull a stunt like this again. And the text tells us the people actually cheered as this happened. It was like this massive dark cloud had finally lifted off the kingdom. From then on, King Alexander ruled with even more wisdom than he had before. Why? Because he'd seen the dark side. He intimately understood just how fragile trust really is and how crucial it is to protect it. His comeback wasn't just a return to the status quo. It became this legendary lesson for everyone who came after him. So, what does this all mean for us today? Well, this isn't just an old fable about guys in crowns. It's practically a masterclass on how power actually works in our real lives. As we've seen, if you get authority through shady means, it's brittle, it shatters. But leadership built on real character, that stuff is bulletproof. So I want to leave you with a question to chew on. If true authority is genuinely earned through character, how are you building trust in your own leadership? Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this explainer, and I hope this gives you some awesome things to think about going forward. Catch you next time.